Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so U.S. foreign policy. I know, it sounds like this incredibly complex web of backroom deals and endless boring debates. But today, we're totally stripping away the partisan spin and all that political noise. Instead, we're going to look strictly at the mechanics, digging into how the American machine actually operates on the global stage. Let's dive right in.
You know, it is super easy to think international relations only happen over there, right? Like thousands of miles away from your morning coffee. But we really need to ask, does foreign policy actually affect your daily life? Well, as you'll see, you might be totally surprised to find out just how intertwined the global and the local really are.
Imagine drawing a line straight down the middle of government policy. On one side, you've got domestic policy, stuff like student loans and building local bridges. On the other side, foreign policy, global trade, border security, the whole shebang. But honestly, that boundary is incredibly porous. A seemingly local, everyday issue like tech education becomes an international matter the exact second we start talking about foreign trade and immigration.
To make sense of it all, we're going to use a toolkit and players framework. We'll map out the country's main goals, the tools they use to get there, who actually makes the decisions, and why doing all this is just so incredibly difficult.
So, let's start with the foundation. What is the U.S. actually trying to achieve?
Basically, every single move the U.S. government makes abroad stems from four foundational pillars. First, and absolutely foremost, protecting the U.S., its citizens, and its allies. Second, maintaining access to key resources and markets. This is what ensures American consumers have access to everything from foreign tech capital to, well, Swiss chocolate. Third, preserving a global balance of power to keep the peace. And finally, championing human rights and democracy. Seriously, if the government is acting abroad, they are chasing at least one of these four goals.
Okay, so we know what the goals are, but how do we actually get there? That brings us to the Foreign Policy Toolkit.
Pop open that toolkit and you'll find trade policy sitting right on top. One major tool here is protectionism. This means raising tariffs or blocking foreign goods to shield domestic companies, like the U.S. steel industry, from cheaper outside competition. It's a constant, everyday tug-of-war against free trade approaches, like NAFTA, which actively seek to remove those barriers entirely.
Then you've got diplomacy. The 2015 Iran nuclear deal is basically a masterclass in strategic trade-offs. Long-standing economic sanctions were lifted in exchange for halting nuclear development. It's a prime example that nations absolutely can achieve massive strategic victories without firing a single shot.
Think of these tools as sitting on a sliding scale. On the left side, you have soft power, economic sanctions, foreign aid, diplomacy. On the right side, hard power, the sheer, raw force of the military. Typically, hard power is the absolute last resort when soft power fails, like we saw during the Super 10's 2001 Hainan Island incident.
All right, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the speed at which all this happens, broad versus focused actions. Because foreign policy, it definitely doesn't just have one speed. Broadly focused actions, like ratifying treaties or passing massive budgets, are slow. They require immense bureaucratic collaboration, but they result in lasting impacts. On the flip side, sharply focused actions are lightning fast. Think deploying troops or calling an emergency executive summit. These are unilateral, high-stakes moves that are usually spearheaded directly by the president.
Which naturally leads us to ask, who actually gets to make these massive calls? Let's explore a concept called the two presidencies.
While the president is usually the face you see on TV making these decisions, the Constitution demands a really delicate dance of shared power. The president might propose the foreign budget or negotiate a massive treaty, sure, but it is Congress that holds the purse strings and grants final approval. On broad issues, nobody gets to act entirely alone.
But here's a totally fascinating quirk in the system, the two presidencies thesis. Coined by Aaron Wildavsky, this theory suggests that every president essentially works two completely different jobs. Domestically, their policies constantly get bogged down in congressional gridlock. But in foreign policy, the president acts with far more autonomy and success. It is essentially double the work, but often, it's where they can make the absolute biggest immediate impact.
So, why the sudden success abroad? Well, it's something called the rally around the flag effect. Think of President Kennedy speaking in Berlin or President Bush standing at Ground Zero. During intense international crises, all that partisan bickering just stops. Congress and the public unite, basically handing the commander-in-chief a powerful, almost unchecked mandate to take action.
To see a sharply focused action play out in real time, cast your mind back to 1962. When U.S. Navy reconnaissance revealed missile sites in Cuba, President Kennedy didn't sit around waiting for slow legislative diplomacy. He bypassed it entirely for a fast, unilateral naval blockade, a high-stakes, split-second executive decision that literally forced the Soviets to back down.
Fast forward to 2011, and you see the exact same principle at work. Enforcing a no-fly zone over Libya perfectly illustrates the modern president's ability to swiftly authorize hard military power in high-stakes, rapidly changing environments.
For our final stop, let's look at why navigating today's borderless world is just so incredibly difficult.
Honestly, executing these policies today is harder than ever before. Why? Because the international stage is basically a global neighborhood with absolutely zero police force. There's no central enforcer. It's like a homeowners association but with zero actual power. Throw in a wild mix of democracies, authoritarian regimes, and highly unstable economies, and finding any sort of global consensus becomes an absolute diplomatic nightmare.
Complicating this giant puzzle even further are transnational threats. The old days of simple state versus state conflict, where you knew exactly where your enemy lived, are completely over. Today, threats like Al-Qaeda don't respect lines on a map. To fight these borderless networks, the U.S. has to rely heavily on very specialized, sharply focused tools like intelligence gathering and targeted drone strikes. And all of this brings us to a classic, really tough dilemma: the guns versus butter debate. In an increasingly complex, borderless world, how should the U.S. balance its pressing domestic needs, like funding schools and repairing local bridges, against its immense, wildly expensive responsibilities abroad? There are no easy answers here, but understanding the mechanics behind the machine, that is the crucial first step to deciding exactly where you stand. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.